Kakashi and Tobirama are some of the favorites of the verse, especially when it comes to verse battle videos and power scaling. So today, for the every point in the series video series, we're going to take a look at the 2nd and 6th Hokage respectively to see who comes down on top at different points in the timeline. But real quick, if you haven't yet, please subscribe to the channel, and if you like today's content, be sure to leave a like. It really helps me put it out in the algorithm. I cannot tell y'all how much I really appreciate the support y'all keep giving. Y'all are the best subscribers, never forget that. With all that said, let's get into it. So the first round is going to be both fighters as kids. Now this is going to be a bit tricky as we have one character here who has some feats to go off of and another who has practically none. So this is mainly going to be how do feats stack up against lore and implications. The version of Kakashi I'll use is the version that just got his Sharingan from Obito. So not 3 Tomo, but 2 Tomo. And this version of Kakashi is obviously Jonin level. And with the Sharingan, he's now able to effectively use Chidori as well. Not much else is concrete as to what all he has in his arsenal, but we at least know he's able to use the Shadow Clone Jutsu, the Mud Wall, and if I'm not mistaken, the Fireball Jutsu as well. The version of Tobirama we're going to use is the version that briefly fought against Izuna when Hashirama and Madara interfered and stopped their fight. Now, as I said, this fight is going to be a bit tricky since there's practically no feats for Tobirama apart from he's able to box with a no Sharingan Izuna. I'm not 100% sure if Izuna is supposed to be relative to Madara at this point in time, but if we assume so, which I think is fair as Madara also didn't have the Sharingan until after this confrontation, then this means that Tobirama should be able to give Kakashi a tough fight. Since I'm sure Madara's dad wouldn't have brought him along to fight if he didn't feel as though he could at least handle himself. Then again, this was a time when sending out kids to fight in battle was actually pretty common, so I don't know. This round is pretty much going to be all conjecture because the fact that Tobirama, even by this age, is assumed to have fought against a decent number of Uchiha clan members, it's likely he'll be able to handle Kakashi even with the Sharingan. The problem is, we don't know how many Uchiha clan members Tobirama has fought, or how well he actually did against them. But I mean, the fact that he's still alive says a lot, but again, it's just really tricky to speculate. Now there's something I'm going to bring up, and it's going to be up to the viewers if you want to use this as a feat, but if you take the Storm Generations OVA scenes as canon, we do see Kakashi is shown sparring with Minato, and if we assume that Kakashi and Minato spar at least semi-frequently, then it should mean Kakashi is familiar with fighting against someone who has Minato's level of speed. Now, before anyone gets triggered, no, I'm not saying this means Kakashi's speed or reaction time is on the same level as Minato's, as that's clearly not what's being depicted in the scene. But what I am saying is that Kakashi is used to fighting people who have incredible speed. On top of all that, this was Kakashi without the Sharingan. And as far as Tobirama is concerned, he obviously does not have FTG at this point. So all this is to say is that Kakashi should at least be able to keep pace with Tobirama here. So as far as feats go, it's safe to say that Kakashi edges out Tobirama in terms of jutsu variety. As again, he's shown to at least have 3 or 4 confirmed jutsus under his belt by this point. But where I believe Tobirama edges Kakashi out is swordsmanship. Again, not too many feats from Tobirama in this department either, but we see that Tobirama typically fights with a sword and fights pretty well, where Kakashi, despite also being pretty skilled with a sword himself, seems as though he relies more on taijutsu and ninjutsu rather than swordplay. So this might seem like a cop-out answer, but for this round, if we're going off of feats, I say Kakashi should take this high difficulty, especially if you take the OVA scene from Storm Generations as canon, as even though Tobirama has fought in the warring states as a kid, Kakashi also has fought in a war against Chunin and Jonin level fighters, plus sparring and training under Minato. But conversely, if we were to go off of lore and implications, then I think Tobirama should take it. If we assume he's fought against plenty of Uchiha clan members that were at least relative or maybe even stronger than Izuna and Madara, then I'd say that would scale Tobirama higher than Kakashi at this point. So this round is going to be Kakashi at the very end of the Anbu Black Ops career versus the Tobirama that beat Izuna in the Warring States. So I think many would agree that FTG is a big part of what contributes to Minato being above this Kakashi, and the fact that Tobirama has it at all, however much better at it than Minato is, on its own gives Kakashi a lot of trouble here. Now, similar to the last round, it's not 100% clear what all Tobirama has in his arsenal in terms of jutsu variety outside of FTG, but we see that he's able to use the Water Dragon Jutsu, so I think it's safe to assume that he at least has all his water style jutsu variants. When it comes to Kakashi, we can assume he's gotten a decent number of jutsu in his arsenal by this point because it's during this time that he started to gain his reputation as the copy ninja. In terms of swordplay, I'd say they're both relative to each other, as Kakashi is shown to use the sword a bit more in the Anbu arc, but I'd still put Tobirama above Kakashi in this too, as he's fighting pretty good against Izuna. Speaking of Izuna, this will be the scaling that will likely end this round. The fact that Tobirama beat Izuna, who scales relative to MS Madara, who fought against Hashirama, should put Tobirama pretty much above this Kakashi. Now, what I will say, that what Kakashi has going for him here is intelligence and composure. When it comes to intelligence, and by the way, this will likely apply to the rest of the video, I don't really know who to say is smarter here. Obviously, when it comes to being like a scientist, Tobirama has the edge, but in terms of battle IQ, there isn't much to suggest that one is necessarily above the other. I mean, if we're going off of feats, then obviously Kakashi takes the edge, but I don't think it's necessarily fair to discredit Tobirama's battle IQ off of that, as in the war arc he's shown to think on the fly just as much as Kakashi is. So I'd say that all in all, they're pretty much on par with one another in terms of intelligence. Now, when it comes to composure, and this will help in any fight, but I brought it up here because a good reason why Tobirama was able to catch Izuna off guard is because Izuna seemed to be too overconfident and too sure of himself, which is what led to him being taken down by flying Raijin Slice. Kakashi is almost never shown to have this problem. If anything, he typically downplays himself and his abilities. So Kakashi will likely have a clear head in each one of these rounds going forward. With that said, Tobirama still takes this mid-diff. I think some people might think I'm downplaying Tobirama when I say that, but still, Kakashi is still used to fighting against FTG from Minato, and does casually spar with Might Guy, two of whom are considered to be the fastest Shinobi in the series. So I do think it's worth considering who he's fighting here. Kakashi wouldn't do too bad.
Now, there is a case you could make that Kakashi could use Genjutsu on Tobirama, as in the Anbu arc, we do see he's more apt to use it. So maybe he can get Tobirama in a position like Izuna did, where he used his Sharingan to try to attempt Genjutsu, and catch Tobirama off guard that way with a Raikiri instead of a punch. However unlikely that is, I just wanted to bring it up just in case.
But yeah, I mean, obviously I feel like Tobirama still takes this. The next round is going to be part 1 Kakashi versus nerfed Edo Tobirama, the one that fought against Hiruzen with Hashirama. This one seems pretty blatant, but I think people misunderstand a couple things when discussing part 1 Kakashi in general. First, the data book does state that he is Konoha's strongest shinobi, and I've seen a lot of people who think that applies to Hiruzen as well, which we know that's not true. Even though it's not concretely stated, this mainly applies to everyone from Anbu and below. And this Tobirama is fighting against Hiruzen alongside Hashirama and Orochimaru. Speaking of Orochimaru, something that most people tend to bring up when talking about this fight in particular is that Orochimaru made Kakashi crap his pants, and Tobirama went on to give Hiruzen a lot of trouble, and Hiruzen was not crapping his pants against Orochimaru and was actually fighting him. Therefore, Tobirama wins off that alone. And there's a bit of a problem when using that to scale Kakashi here. First off, Orochimaru tends to have that effect with almost everyone. It's just kind of like a thing with him. Even Ibiki, who specializes in psychological warfare, admits that he's frightened of Orochimaru just by the mere sight of him. Plus, this anti-feat for Kakashi kind of contradicts itself literally in the next arc. Kakashi literally says he's prepared for the worst when he's about to fight Itachi Uchiha, and proceeds to not only try to fight him, but actually does pretty well all things considered, to which even Itachi and Kisame remark. And Itachi is confirmed to be stronger than Orochimaru. So Kakashi being fear-hacked by Orochimaru doesn't necessarily correlate to how strong Kakashi is, or how weak. Now, does that mean I think he could beat Orochimaru here? No. I think that's definitely the implication that's established in the scene, that Kakashi is not strong enough to beat Orochimaru. But I did want to bring that up just for the ones who want to use that as an anti-feat for their only argument. Now, in regards to Tobirama, if part of his nerf here is that he can't use FTG, which would be consistent with what we saw in the fight with Hiruzen, then Kakashi won't be as overwhelmed as he would be if Tobirama had it. Having said that, Kakashi still has a pretty serious fight on his hands. Apart from intelligence, what Kakashi has going for him here is his precog and versatility. Speaking of his versatility, when it comes to trying to seal Tobirama, there is a possibility that Kakashi has a seal in his arsenal that could work on this nerfed Tobirama. I'm not exactly sure which seal, but we do see Orochimaru is impressed by Kakashi's strength in sealing ninjutsu, so maybe that could speak to Kakashi's chances here. Something that might play a part in this fight is the Bringer of Darkness Genjutsu, which technically was Hashirama's jutsu in the manga, but was used by Tobirama in the anime. But I mean, if we're being real though, like the fact that Tobirama invented things like the Edo Tensei, Shadow Clones, and FTG, I seriously doubt that the Infinite Darkness Jutsu is going to be something that he couldn't learn. The problem with this though, is that Kakashi might be able to break through it with his Sharingan. This is like up in the air because Hiruzen did have trouble with it, but Hiruzen also doesn't have a dojutsu like Kakashi does. And we never seen this jutsu being used on someone who has a dojutsu. So we don't really know if Kakashi could see Tobirama within the Infinite Darkness or if he'd be able to see through the Genjutsu at all in the first place. Plus, something that most people overlook is that Kakashi doesn't just rely on his sight to fight. As shown in his fight with the stone Shinobi who can camouflage, Kakashi remarks that even his scent is gone, so they'll have to track him just by sound alone, meaning that Kakashi is adept in fighting with both scent and sound.
Also, something that Kakashi could use to counter the Bringer of Darkness Jutsu is his Bloodhounds. Now, obviously, the Bloodhounds won't do much against Tobirama himself, but if he summons them while he's in the Genjutsu, they could help track Tobirama's scent or by sound, since, I mean, dogs do hear pretty good.
Then there's the attack power of both characters. When it comes to ninjutsu, I'd say Tobirama is going to have the edge here even if he's nerfed. A good example of this is the fact that in this fight with Hiruzen, Tobirama was able to make a wall of water with no water source nearby and did it with little to no difficulty. Kakashi, on the other hand, while his water dragon jutsu and his giant vortex jutsu that were used against Zabuza were definitely impressive, it is shown he needed the water source around him to perform those jutsu. Same goes for the water wall that was used to defend against Itachi's water style attack. It's also the same in the anime version of the second bell test in the beginning of Shippuden, where Kakashi used the water dragon jutsu and used the lake that he was on to do so. But there is an exception to this in Kakashi's case. During the fight between Hidan and Kakuzu, Kakashi was also shown to be able to use the water wall without a water source nearby, and did so a couple times. Granted, this is a stronger version of Kakashi, but I mean, I at least thought it was worth mentioning. So while Kakashi can copy most of what Tobirama might have in his arsenal, I'm not too sure if Kakashi can replicate the attack potency as well. Which brings me to the subject of chakra reserves. And I think this goes without saying that Tobirama is going to have a good edge in this. Although Kakashi's chakra pool isn't quite as bad in part 1 as most people tend to think it is, Tobirama, even without Edo Tensei, boasts a pretty large chakra supply. So unless Kakashi is able to seal Tobirama somehow, then Tobirama, wins this through a battle of attrition. It's even worse if we do put FTG on the table. Now, one thing I will say is that Kakashi might be able to actually box with Tobirama here in Taijutsu. As we see, Old Man Hiruzen doing pretty decent, all things considered. And I don't really know if Old Man Hiruzen was using any of the gates when he was fighting in hand-to-hand against Tobirama, but we do know Kakashi is able to use at least the first gate, which obviously gives him a strength boost. So I think this might play into like how, and obviously Kakashi is skilled in Taijutsu, training forever with my guy. So I think if it came to hand-to-hand, Kakashi might be able to handle himself here.
The best case I could make for Kakashi in this scenario is his potential scaling to Tsunade. Jiraiya and Orochimaru both state that Kakashi and Kabuto are on the same level, and Kabuto went on to give Tsunade some trouble in their fight. Now, obviously, he did so because Tsunade was a little bit nerfed due to her fear of blood, so she was kind of suppressed, and she probably didn't take Kabuto too seriously as she should have. So there is that. At best, you could probably get Kakashi to a suppressed Tsunade scaling. So maybe if you want to go off of that, it might determine how much more better Kakashi could do in this scenario.
But all things considered, yeah, I think that Tobirama does have the edge in this, especially if Kakashi doesn't have a seal in his arsenal to be able to take this Tobirama out. Then it'll be a bit of a hassle to deal with. Next up, we have Arc Kakashi with one Sharingan versus Edo Tobirama. I know I've skipped most of the Shippuden Kakashi, but since there aren't too many versions of Tobirama that would coincide with Shippuden Kakashi, and since I'm already going to be talking about a live Hokage Tobirama in another section, to save time, we'll just go over these versions. Right off the bat, the most important thing to cover is going to be speed and reaction time. I know there's a big argument in the Naruto power scaling community about Tobirama's speed compared to Minato's. Without getting too much into the debate on that subject, let's just say for the sake of conversation that Tobirama's speed is on the same level as Minato's. I know when it comes to teleportation, they're already relative, but again, just to save time, let's just say that they're like dead even with each other. It still may not matter. Let's start with Tobirama. Tobirama has some pretty crazy feats for sure. The ones that typically come to mind is him being able to put tags on Jubito as Tobirama was getting blitzed by him, being able to teleport Jubito's explosion that was on Minato back to Jubito before Jubito could react to it, and being able to blitz Jubito with Naruto using Sage Rasengan. And what makes that even better is that Jubito was literally looking at both Naruto and Tobirama, and Naruto spoke an entire sentence to him and immediately was teleported to Jubito and blitzed him. So while you could call that a surprise attack, Obito wasn't necessarily caught off guard, and Tobirama still managed to quote-unquote hit him before he could react. There's also implication that Tobirama might have been able to blitz One-Eyed Rinnegan Madara had he not had Sage Jutsu. So even though his attack failed, I felt it was worth bringing up, especially since Tobirama reacted to Madara's first counterattack. Now, Kakashi, on the other hand, I would say has more impressive feats. In terms of travel speed, the best scaling I can get for him is being able to move in the same pace with KCM2 Minato when they both try to attack Zetsu, as Zetsu is trying to retrieve Obito's Rinnegan. I understand that some people don't subscribe to this, but at the very least, you could say that they're at least relative. Where Kakashi truly shines as far as speed goes is his reaction time. Channel veterans, you'll no doubt be aware of how crazy the hype I give Kakashi, but these feats are kind of insane. First couple is being able to warp a KCM1 Naruto's Rasengan heading at Obito, and almost right after, being able to warp a KCM2 Naruto clone heading at Obito as well. Since I know some people are bound to bring it up, yes, I am aware of a couple things. One, Naruto Kakashi had a plan, so obviously Naruto needed to make sure Kakashi would be able to warp he and the Rasengan in time. And two, the KCM2 Naruto that Kakashi warped was, again, a clone, and clones scale lower to the original. Both are good arguments. However, for the first counterpoint, yes, they had a plan, so they had to be in sync with one another, but they also had to make sure this plan worked, and part of making it work was being able to see that Naruto is heading at Obito at full speed. In both cases, this is exactly what they did, which is why in the first plan, Obito literally admits to his confusion when he says, "I see, so that's what happened. It wasn't that Naruto undid his Rasengan, but that you used Kamui to send the Rasengan away, right, Kakashi?" For the second counterpoint, yes, the KCM2 clone scales lower to the original, but being that he only had one clone on the field and not 12 or 13 super clones, it means that his chakra wasn't as divided as much. So at bare minimum, you could make an argument to say that KCM2 Naruto clone had the speed of KCM1 Naruto, whose speed has already been compared to Minato's teleportation anyway. And even if you still don't subscribe to any of those counterpoints, there's a feat within a feat here. Kakashi was able to warp the KCM2 Naruto clone into Kamui before a Rinnegan Obito could both notice and throw a projectile at point blank. Like he literally thought that he hit the clone and made it disappear. Now before I list some later feats, there is one implication to contribute to Kakashi's speed and reaction time. During 8th Gate's guy fight with Madara, Kakashi thinks back to his conversation with Sakabo when Sakamo said that Guy will eventually surpass him. Kakashi doesn't remark that his father was right until this moment when Guy is fighting Madara in the 8th Gate, implying that Kakashi could at the very least go toe-to-toe with Guy in the 7th Gate, which is kind of important because the 7th Gate Guy was able to press Juidara enough to get him in a position to be hit with Hirodora at point blank. Now, if I'm being honest, what puts Kakashi over 7th Gate Guy is probably solely Kamui, but then that just helps my case here. Besides, it's not too outlandish, as Kakashi is seen keeping pace with 6th Gate Guy earlier on, and now obviously I know there's a pretty good gap between 6th and 7th Gate Guy, but still. There actually have been people who will argue that 6th and 7th Gate Guy is either reaching to or blatantly at the Raikage's level of speed. Maybe even faster in the 7th Gate, and I could definitely see their point. Anyway, the next few feats are pretty impressive as well. In the scene where Obito looks like he's going to give the Rinnegan to Juidara, Gaara, Minato, and Kakashi all at the same time to prevent that from happening. Kakashi starts to use Kamui on Obito, and Minato attempts to blitz Madara with a Sage Up Rasengan. Madara then chops Minato's arm off, kicks it back at Kakashi, and Kakashi has enough time to stop the Kamui on Obito and use another one on Minato's arm before it touches him. The last impressive feat he pulls off is, granted with some assistance from Gaara, but Kakashi is able to warp a portion of Madara's True Single Orb before a guy can get to it. And what makes these two feats above more impressive is that Kakashi states by this point he was starting to lose his sight in his left eye. All this is to say is that Tobirama does have the speed to give Kakashi some trouble here, but given the feats from Kakashi's reaction time, he should be at the very least able to keep pace with Tobirama. Outside of FTG, there's not much in Tobirama's arsenal that Kakashi shouldn't be able to deal with. The Bringer of Darker Jutsu is still an annoying jutsu, but as we've already established, there's a possibility that Kakashi can counter it. Tobirama's water style is pretty strong, especially the Severing Wave as it chopped through some of the Divine Tree pretty easily. But Kakashi was able to quickly use a Mud Wall before Obito's Fireball Jutsu could hit him, and was strong enough to tank it too. So I think Kakashi will likely be able to do the same thing with Tobirama's water style jutsu. Now what I will say will be a problem for Kakashi is the subject of chakra reserves. Like I said earlier, even without Edo Tensei, Tobirama has a crazy chakra supply. And with said supply, it's likely Tobirama can summon several shadow clones and put pressure on Kakashi. Speaking of clones, Tobirama being able to use them in conjunction with FTG is also going to give Kakashi a lot of hassle. And while Kakashi at this point is no chakra slouch, he doesn't have the amount that an Edo Tobirama is going to have. However, Kakashi can likely make enough clones to at least help him out here, and if he's able to keep tabs on the original Tobirama that summoned the clones, then he might be able to still get Tobirama into Kamui. Even more so if Kakashi can use the lightning clone. Though I might be willing to believe that the clones combined with FTG could just be a good win con for Tobirama. Now an argument that's brought up is that if Tobirama has a flying Raijin mark in the real world, it won't matter if he gets sucked into Kamui because he can just teleport out. People use Boruto being able to FTG across dimensions as a feat, and that's definitely a good argument. The counter argument though is that the data book does label Kamui as a sealed dimension, meaning if you're caught in it, you cannot get out unless it's with Kamui, which is consistent with what we've seen. No one's been able to get out of Kamui besides using Kamui itself. A good implication is that when Sasuke is in Kamui and is being healed by Karin in the 5 Kage Summit, Obito teleports into Kamui and Sasuke literally tells him to let me out. And by this point, Sasuke has his Hawk that he can summon if he wants to use a reverse summoning. We even see the Hawk being able to be summoned in the lava dimension from Kaguya. So if Sasuke felt like he could, he would just reverse summon out. But he told Obito to let me out of here, not get me out, implying that he couldn't get out. Granted, it could just mean that he was expecting Obito to let him out anyway, but I still thought it was worth bringing up. The other thing that can give Kakashi some trouble here is Tandem Paper Bomb, which is definitely a powerful jutsu and could potentially kill Kakashi. But if he's quick enough to pick up on what's going on, then he might be able to warp himself into Kamui before he gets injured. Some might think that giving Kakashi the ability to warp himself into Kamui is reaching, but we see in the latter part of the war arc that Kakashi is able to warp himself out of Kamui. And if I'm just going to guess, I don't see warping out being too much different than warping in. Plus, we see Madara do the exact same thing, and he's not even expert with Kamui, unlike Kakashi and Obito. That being said, I am willing to believe that if Kakashi is unsuspecting about what's about to happen, then he could be caught off guard by Tandem Paper and be screwed. And then the last little bit of this round is that if you don't believe Kakashi can get the win by a Kamui snipe, then the only other way is to seal Tobirama. And again, like I said earlier, it's unclear whether or not he have a sealing jutsu in his arsenal that could seal Tobirama, but being that Kakashi has a serious supply of jutsu, and that he's Minato's student, who Minato is a sealing jutsu expert, and that Tobirama was impressed by Kakashi's sealing capabilities, then I'd say there's a decent call for it. For this match, I say all in all, I give this to Kakashi about 7 out of 10 times. It's pretty tough either way for both fighters, and I can definitely see Tobirama winning this, but with Kakashi's reaction time and Kamui, I think he has the edge in it. And real quick, I don't think we need to really even go over DMS Kakashi versus any version of Tobirama. I think we could just... So for the last round, it's going to be Hokage Kakashi versus Alive Hokage Tobirama. So I'm going to do it in 2 separate scenarios since I know there are people who don't take the novels as canon and those like myself who do. So Alive Tobirama versus novel Kakashi. Now to be honest, this might actually be in kind of the same ballpark as DMS Kakashi. Not exactly to the same degree, but I mean, good lord, Kakashi is busted. So in the Kakashi Hiden novel, Kakashi is able to casually perception blitz Kaio, who is a character who is able to perception blitz the Raikage in a training bout. Who, I guess in the way the book describes it, sounds like the Raikage was going about like 50% of his strength and speed. So that puts Kakashi at bare minimum on the Raikage's level of speed and reaction time. A side note, Kyle was also able to blitz a shadow clone on base Naruto, and this Naruto is the same Naruto you would see in Naruto the Last. While he was exhausted and injured, Kakashi was also able to use purple lightning from his hand to create what, from the book describes it, a attack that looks and sounds similar to Sasuke's Kirin, to which it made even Onoki crap his pants and start saying like, wow, these Konoha Shinobi are kind of reckless. This is Onoki who fought against Madara in the Fourth War. Kakashi was also able to knock out Lee and base in like 2 seconds with just taijutsu alone. In the Kakashi Retsuden novel, Kakashi is actually stated to be stronger than his War Arc Kakashi self. He's able to use a new jutsu called Earth-style Quartz Wall, which is a Earth-style mud wall that was able to surround an entire village for 24 hours. Now, granted, we don't really know like how big the actual village was. For all we know, it could have been as big as a Rain Village, or it could have been as big as a Leaf Village. We don't really know. But again, he was able to keep it up for 24 hours straight, and nobody was able to get through the wall. The wall was actually also immune to lightning style. Funny enough, the Prime Minister in this novel actually says to Kakashi after the 24 hours of keeping the wall up, and literally says to Kakashi, like, shouldn't you be out of chakra by now? And Kakashi just wipes one sweat off his forehead and is like, that's only what you want to believe. Kakashi was also able to defeat 50 ninja with ease, like with just a little bit of taijutsu, I say taijutsu, but it was more of a frying pan, and a smidge of genjutsu. Funny enough, actually, he moved so fast during this whole fight with the 50 ninja that the ninja that he fought actually was starting to question that if he even lost his Sharingan at all. But the most impressive thing he does, however, is gotta be the fire style water mist jutsu. It's pretty much a giant flaming phoenix, and the way the books describe it, it sounds like it's a summoning jutsu that can just remain on the field for however long Kakashi wants it on the field for. It can shoot individual fire attacks, which are able to overpower an attack from the Sage's 6-pass ninja tool, water style ninja tool by the way, so it's affinity that it's weakest against. And according to the novel, water style ninja tool was able to accidentally flood an entire country with one attack. So this means obviously that any water style jutsu that Tobirama whips out is going to be just overpowered. The way the book describes his purple lightning attack also, he's able to use it the same way he uses Chidori, where it surrounds his hand. He's able to use it as a projectile, similar to his lightning fang. Again, like I said earlier, he's able to use it similar to how Sasuke uses Kirin, and he's also able to use it from his body, similar to how Sasuke uses his Jordy string. Meaning that if Tobirama is somehow able to put a FTG mark on Kakashi, anytime Tobirama attempts to blitz him by teleporting, Kakashi can just use his purple lightning from his body to knock Tobirama back. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to be guaranteed in killing Tobirama. All I'm saying is it's a good defense counter for FTG. And considering how much chakra this Kakashi has, it's likely he can do this for quite a while. Overall, using only the novel speeds, this makes him a Hashirama tier fighter. Like, maybe not quite as strong as Hashirama, but definitely in the same tier. Now, if we're just going to go off the anime side of this, Hokage Kakashi was able to casually beat all the academy students with just one attack, really, which, I mean, it's not too big of a, but he's also able to blitz Noe and slice its tail off. Mind you, Naruto didn't even attempt to fight Noe and base. He instantly attempted to transform, which implies Kakashi might be relative to a base Hokage Naruto. At the very least, they're on that same level. And based Hokage Naruto was able to react and block attacks from a fused Momoshiki. But Kakashi's most impressive fight is against Kakashi and Koji, which Kakashi stomps a Koji's shadow clone, and Koji considers facing Kakashi a serious risk, which implies they're relative. Because if we're using the Boruto anime feats, this makes Kakashi relative to a 10% Jigen, as Koji in the anime was relative to him. So by the end of the Boruto anime, if you want to just, use the anime beats only, this might make Kakashi a mid Otsutsuki level fighter. So I'd say that when pitting him up against Tobirama here, even with FTG, Tobirama has a serious fight on his hands to say the least, especially for those who like to scale Tobirama at his lowest, which would be the Kinkaku force, which I don't agree with. Like, I think it's kind of criminal to put Tobirama in that low category when people overlook a few things. One, not unlike the team of Jonin in the Sasuke retrieval arc, Tobirama's team was implied to be either on a mission or back from one, so they weren't exactly in top shape. Two, it's been debated on who exactly was in the Kinkaku force. Like, was it actually the Gold Silver Brothers plus 20 ninja? How strong were the other ninja? Were they Anbu or S rank? Or were they just fodder Chunin and Jonin. And the third thing is that Kinkaku and Ginkaku both had Nine-Tails chakra by this point. So if Tobirama didn't know that going in, I can see that maybe catching him off guard. But if he did know, and at its highest assertion, if we indeed say that the Gold and Silver brothers were with the Nine-Tails chakra plus 20 other S-rank ninja in combination with Tobirama not being at his best in that moment, then yeah, I can see how Tobirama might get overwhelmed. But if you do take it at its lowest, then yeah, that makes it even worse here for Tobirama in regards to fighting Kakashi. Now, real quick, something I didn't mention in the video is Tobirama being able to use Edo Tensei. Yes, I know he has it, but I wasn't really sure if I wanted to use that since we never really seen him perform it even as an experiment through a flashback or something. And if we assume it was weaker than what Orochimaru had during his fight with Hiruzen, then whoever he brought back might not even make much of a difference against Hokage Kakashi, and arguably War Kakashi. So when it comes to Hokage Kakashi versus alive Hokage Tobirama, I'd say Kakashi wins this one like 9 out of 10 times. I know people are going to hate me for that, but I'm sorry. This Kakashi is definitely busted. So there you all have it. There's the rest of the video. There is Tobirama versus Kakashi. Thank you all for watching. Hope you did enjoy the video. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Let me know in the comments which fight you think is the closest out of all these. Let me know who you think wins more often than not. Maybe am I downplaying Tobirama? I know there's going to be people who think I am, and I'm not sorry if you do think so. But thank you all for watching anyway. Be sure to like the video if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Click the bell for more notifications. Till the next one, LightningSnow out.